James Watt, the father of the Industrial Revolution. Newton and gravity, Röntgen and X-rays, Mestral and Velcro, Plunkett and Teflon. Some of history's most important scientific discoveries have been unintentional, and James Watt's incident with a kettle is no less significant. Young James is said to have spent over an hour at his aunt's tea table, watching the lid of a kettle rise and realizing the power of steam. Some dismiss the story as a myth, but James Watt went on to conduct numerous laboratory experiments generating steam using a kettle as a boiler. His advances in the steam engine sparked the Industrial Revolution, altered economies, and laid the groundwork for seismic social change. The engine that powered the revolution. Marion Campbell, James Watt's cousin, described him as a sickly, delicate, but brilliant boy who would sit for hours poring over mathematical calculations and dismantling and reassembling his toys. James Watt's talent for observation and practical application propelled him to the position of engineering virtuoso at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. His contributions to science and industry led to the creation of the unit of power named after him. Watt did not invent the steam engine, but his pioneering work on steam power culminated in his invention of a separate condenser, which greatly improved the efficiency of the Newcomen engine. This was arguably the most important invention of the 18th century, and his steam engine became known as the Industrial Revolution's workhorse. James Watt propelled us into the modern era, but his difficult childhood and subsequent setbacks defined him. Watt, the son of a shipwright and grandson of a well-known mathematician, was prone to bouts of illness and was largely home-schooled by his well-educated mother, Agnes. Initially, his father's business prospered and grew, and the young James would work in the workshop, making models and repairing nautical instruments. However, during Watt's adolescence, a series of commercial disasters struck, and the company began to flounder. His father's health began to deteriorate, and 2 years after his mother died, James Watt, then 19, was forced to relocate to London to study instrument making. He learned the trade in a single year. Watt returned to Glasgow in 1756, certain that as Scotland's only mathematical instrument maker, he would have no trouble finding work. However, Watt's hopes were dashed when the Glasgow Guild of Hammermen refused to hire him because he had not served the required 7 years as an apprentice. So much for being a quick study. Watt was caught in a catch-22 situation. There was no one to apprentice with because no one specialized in his field existed. Nobody ever said being a pioneer was easy. Revolutionary improvements. Watt was saved by the University of Glasgow, which hired him privately to restore a variety of astronomical instruments. He was then given the opportunity to establish a small workshop at the university. Despite his lack of business acumen, he formed a partnership with architect and businessman John Craig, and they produced musical instruments and toys for the next 6 years. Watt became increasingly interested in steam engine technology while working at the university. In 1758, Adam Smith, the father of modern capitalism, introduced Watt to John Robinson, who then introduced Watt to the science of steam. The pivotal moment in history occurred in 1763, when Watt was asked by the university to repair a steam-powered Newcomen steam engine invented by English engineers Savery and Newcomen. For decades, the Newcomen engine had been widely used to pump water out of mines, but it was inefficient. Watt discovered that the engine wasted most of its thermal energy by repeatedly heating and cooling the cylinder rather than converting it to mechanical energy. Watt's solution was to condense steam in a separate chamber without cooling the rest of the engine. His invention effectively transformed a limited-use machine into one that would power the Industrial Revolution.
Watt was broke at the time, so he was grateful to British inventor John Roebuck, who took 2/3 ownership of Watt's invention. However, one major issue was the scarcity of skilled labor required to produce components with sufficient accuracy and precision. Meanwhile, the patent on Watt's invention was proving prohibitively expensive, so Watt was forced to work as a surveyor and civil engineer for 8 years to supplement his income.
However, Roebuck went bankrupt, and the patent rights were acquired by Matthew Boulton, owner of the Soho manufactory near Birmingham. Boulton finally gave Watt access to the precision boring and instrument making he required, and in 1774, the Boulton and Watt Company was founded in Birmingham to manufacture Watt's improved steam engine. With high demand, the pair rose to prominence during the Industrial Revolution, and their partnership lasted for the next 25 years. Going full steam. Because of its rapid incorporation into many industries, the Watt engine was a defining development of the Industrial Revolution. The mines were Boulton and Watt's first customers, but it was Boulton who saw the potential for other applications. Boulton encouraged Watt to convert the piston's reciprocating motion into rotational power for grinding, weaving, and milling. Watt's engines quickly became the power source for paper, flour, cotton, and iron mills. In 1800, both Boulton and Watt retired and passed the business on to their sons. Watt spent his remaining years conducting additional research before dying in 1819 and being buried alongside his loyal business partner, Matthew Boulton. Watt was a true industrial modernity pioneer, and his brilliance lay in his innate ability to apply theoretical scientific knowledge in practical ways. His inventions demonstrate his profound knowledge of those sciences, and that peculiar characteristic of genius, the union of them for practical application, Cornish chemist and inventor Humphrey Davy said. Watt's improvements to the steam engine resurrected industry by making efficient and dependable motive power available for the first time, while also causing widespread urbanization as rural families flocked to towns and cities. Were it not for James Watt, the Industrial Revolution might never have happened, Sotheby's director James Miller said after a historic first-hand account of the young Watt's kettle experiment surfaced in 2002. He was not only the most prolific innovator imaginable, but he also had one of the greatest minds of his generation.